It's the Innovation Stream, and I'm here with Jessica Platt. Hi, Jessica.
Hi, Richard.
Hi. So we're talking FemTech.
Yes.
Let's start with the big question. What has blown you away in relation to FemTech in recent times?
I think what's blown me away recently is the arrival of a new app called The Lowdown. And this app is like Go Compare, but for contraception. So it's a source of truth, that empowers people with understanding about the different contraceptions that are out there and gives you the information that you need to really understand what it's going to do to you and your body.
So just information source, that's what it is?
Yeah. And so it doesn't really sound very high tech at all. But I think what blew me away was realizing how many decisions I'd made without that depth of knowledge. Making decisions based on a leaflet from a doctor or a quick Google search, which is often fairly confusing and fairly conflicting. I think it really changed the way that I think about the decisions that I make about my health and what I put in my body, because I now want that level of information. I want that level of insight before I make a choice.
So I've associated FemTech with reproductive health for the last decade or so. Is there much more we can achieve there?
There's so much opportunity to help women in managing symptoms or conditions that disproportionately or differently impact them. So things like heart attacks impact women very differently. So lots of women die of heart attacks because even in the medical textbooks, they're not written, they're not described in the way that they present for a woman. So I think I'm really excited to see, what's to come in spaces that feel like just healthcare generally, but actually in a way that makes sure that women's needs are met.
So I feel like innovation's a quite well understood process. Is the innovation process different for FemTech developments?
The short answer is no. It's not different for FemTech. But the FemTech team and I, we really believe that for FemTech to be successful, we have to almost use it as a philosophy. It's like a philosophy of innovation. And so we believe that this philosophy, it's all about inclusivity. It's about experience-led design, and it's about really integrating the technology in a way that's smart and appropriate for the user. So what that means is it's sort of like a lens that we apply. So if we have an innovation opportunity in the FemTech space, we're like, okay, we've got to apply this lens, we've got to apply our FemTech philosophy and make sure that at every step of the way, we're thinking about those three principles, the inclusivity, experience-led design, and smart integration of tech, so that the products that we make meet the user needs and can be successful going forward.
So I've heard concern about accessibility and affordability of today's FemTech innovation. The new stuff, can everyone access it? What's your view there?
Well, a lot of the FemTech innovation that's been done recently has been very focused on the kind of direct-to-consumer sales process and business strategy. And that is challenging because, developing new tech isn't cheap. Some people are creating novel sensors, some people are applying existing tech, but in new ways. So at the moment, it's not really very accessible for the majority of people. And I think that is something that's a big thing that's going to have to be addressed. It's expensive at the moment. The Elvi breast pump is expensive. Most mothers can't afford that. So FemTech innovation is creating these incredible products that empower women, but so many women can't afford them at the moment. But I think there is some really interesting progress being made with changing the business model. So working with payers other than the consumer. So in the States, that's insurance companies or even businesses. So Carrot Fertility has started working really closely with businesses to provide fertility benefits through work. And that makes fertility services a lot more accessible for people working within those companies. They've also brought out a credit card, so the Carrot card. So as you spend, you earn points that can go towards fertility treatment. So there is some really interesting kind of business strategy innovation going on alongside the tech innovation that will hopefully make it more accessible. But ultimately, we do still have a long way to go.
Let's talk a bit about technology. Mm-hmm. I like hardware, products, things you can drop on your foot.
Yes.
Is there much in the way of that coming? FemTech stuff, hardware?
Oh yeah, for sure. Think about like sex tech especially. That's where I think a lot of people's minds go to when they think about femtech, there are some incredibly amazing sex toys being developed, which use really complex, interesting, innovative robotics and technology. So Laura DiCarlo has fantastic robotic sex toys, which are, they won CES awards multiple years in a row. So that's really exciting. But there's also some really cool stuff being developed, like in other health areas. So there's a company called Cali Balance, which is creating a headband for people with vertigo. And so often what vertigo happens when one of the bones in your inner ear kind of gets dislodged or in the wrong place. And this happens disproportionately to women, especially during menopause, when estrogen levels change and it changes your bone density. One of the ways to treat this is that a physiotherapist can kind of help you move your head in specific ways to, to help move that bone back where it needs to be. But it's hard to get to a physiotherapist all the time, especially, for women who have, often have more reliance on public transport, childcare, responsibilities and requirements. So Cali Balance has created this headband, which uses a lot of really existing kind of off-the-shelf tech, like accelerometers and other things to provide feedback, that literally you put on and it guides your head. It gives you kind of haptic feedback on how you need to move your head to do these exercises, so that women can kind of treat, or anyone, but particularly women, when this happens disproportionately to women, can treat themselves from home.
Cool. Any other things, any other hardware products that are interesting?
Well, yeah, so there's the Elvi breast pump, I think is amazing. I know I said that it was very expensive, hard for some people to access, but at the same time, the sort of the hands-free element is amazing.
Breast pumps have been around for years. What's different about this?
So this one, breast pumps have been around for years, but often they looked a little bit like a boombox with some wires, and you were they weren't very portable, which makes it, if you have any kind of requirement in your life to move, really inconvenient. So these ones are wearable. You can put them in your bra. They're quiet, and they've kind of really innovated the collection process. So the milk is collected into small bottles. There are fewer wires to clean. It's reduced leakage. All of that, which means that if you want to, you can kind of move around and do other things while expressing breast milk. So it just gives women a little bit more choice and a little bit more freedom.
Very good. I was reading some of the case studies around femtech that CDP have published, and I saw one that was about kitchen knives. And my instinct was, well, what's that got to do with the needs of women? Tell me more.
What we found when we were doing the research for that project was that women who tend to have smaller hands, or actually anyone who has smaller hands, but usually that's women, often end up using the wrong knife for tasks, because having smaller hands makes using a larger knife feel less stable and less secure. But that actually leads to sometimes slightly dangerous situations where you're using a small knife to chop up a big thing. And so what we wanted to do was develop a knife for everyone. And what that meant was developing a knife that would work for women as well as men. And so this was part of our FemTech philosophy, because it's inclusivity. So it wasn't about making a knife for women. We didn't want to shrink it and pink it. It's about creating a product that works for everyone who needs to use it. And so what that meant in practice was, after doing the insights research, gathering those insights, we then worked with our designers, we worked with our engineers, and we created a knife that has a differently shaped grip for the cutting hand. On the blade itself, on the top of the blade itself, we created a special safety groove, which means that if you do have smaller hands, you can use both hands safely to use the knife and stabilize the knife, in order to make sure that everyone feels comfortable using it. So it's not about making a knife just for women, but it's about moving beyond that male standard to make sure that these knives work for everyone who needs to use them.
I get it. I heard this lovely phrase, shrink it and pink it.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's what you should not do in developing femtech innovation, but it made me think there must be some great examples of shrink it and pink it.
Yes, the one that really springs to mind is a display that I saw in a hardware shop in America, which had small pink power tools on display. And, small and pink, fine. I'm all about everyone having whatever color power tools they want. But what was really aggravating about it was that they'd sort of doubled or tripled even the price. So it was this kind of really patronizing idea that, for women to do DIY, they need something small, they need it to be pink, and they're going to pay through the nose for it.
Yeah, that's great. How about the field of diagnostics? Are there any interesting innovations to come there?
Yeah, I'm really excited to see how diagnostics develops. And I think one of the really intriguing and exciting opportunities in that space is bringing cervical smear tests in-home. Because at the moment, so many women miss their cervical screening because it's not comfortable, it's awkward going into the GP's office. It feels like a really big deal. I know a lot of people skip them. And actually, what we've seen through COVID is that diagnostic tests can be done in home, can be done effectively. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing how we bring that opportunity to do cervical smear tests in home and the impact that has on women's health going forward.
Great. And finally, what is the gap that you can't wait for FemTech to fill? What's a really interesting area that needs to be dealt with?
So something that I'm excited about seeing is actually looking at male reproductive health. And that doesn't sound very, that's not expected for FemTech, but it is an important part. And I think, Legacy is a company that's looking at male reproductive health, looking at sperm count and sperm freezing. But what's really exciting about this space, and I think for me as an anthropologist, as someone who's interested in storytelling, the more we focus on male reproductive health as well as female reproductive health within the FemTech space, the greater the opportunity is to change the narrative about reproductive health being kind of the fault or the responsibility of the woman. Actually, it's about everyone involved in that process. It's about both people in the couple. And looking at male reproductive health will have great impacts, I think, on reproduction, going forward. But it also gives us an opportunity to realize that reproductive issues or challenges are not just a woman's issue. And I think that change in narrative will have a huge impact as well going forward.
Jessica, it's been really great talking to you. I love the evident passion that you've got for the space. And I'm enjoying working in the same company as you to actually get to see the work that you do. It's fantastic. So thanks very much for speaking to me today.
Thank you for having me.